And welcome. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I am working with my friend, Mr. Caperton, to make sure that he has the link to join our meeting today. Thank you so much for joining us. We have got a great show lined up for you where we're going to talk more about finding common ground. That's awesome. And with vision alignment, we all need to understand how important it is for our core beliefs, our core values to really be aligned with our vision. Sometimes we need to take those blinders off, but other times we need to put those blinders back on. So I'm gonna while we're on here, I'm gonna make sure that Dave has the information he needs, and I will also make sure that I tell everyone else that we're on, so we can have that going for us. So let's see here. Well, where is Mr. Caperton? Dave. He's joining us shortly. I know he knows about this. But, sometimes things just work out the way they work out, and we roll with what we have. So we're okay. And there's Dave. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Brian.
How are you?
I was using our Monday link. I'm sitting in here going, why not much is happening? I'm typing into the chat box. Am I in the right place? Hello.
Well, hey, sorry about that. I should have told you there was a different link.
That would be helpful. Yes.
My bad. Sorry.
That's all right.
So
I wasn't the one tap dancing. I'm just going
yeah.
You want or I won't. So
here we go.
All right.
So anyway, so tell us, Dave, real quick. And I've got this question for you. What's the result of us finding common ground?
Well, the result is that we create understanding, and we end up sharing some vision. It gives us the opportunity to share vision, and since that's what your whole brand is all about, when people share vision, they can. We talk about unity. It's possible when people share the same vision. That's impossible without finding a way to some common ground.
Awesome. If you want to hear more, stay right there. Awesome. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate those words. And thank you for joining us again here on the Vision Alignment Show. So your presence is very much needed at this time, because you do such a good job of talking about vision. You do such a good job of talking about commonalities, but you also talk about spreading joy. And I think that's really important for us all to understand how we can all spread joy.
That's right.
I've been thinking about your comments in regards to finding common ground, and I go back to the conversations I've had with the kids at the School for the Blind. So there's one young lady, I would call her a young woman, I guess is the right term. A young woman, she's maybe 18, and we were talking one day about what her favorite music was, and she says, "Yeah, I like lots of older music. I like some of the classics, like Blondie and Journey." I'm like,
all right, good.
Those are not classics. I said, those are my tunes.
You didn't know you were classic.
So here I am. I am a classic.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. We talk about common ground. We all want to have common ground. We all want to know, we don't all want to know this, but if we're in our right frame of mind, or whatever it is you want to say, if we're having the best self, the best version of ourself,
Right.
we're finding common ground. So for me, common ground was music, and yes, Blondie, whatever,
Yeah.
that was a common ground. But I mean,
Of course, you were buying it when it was fresh vinyl,
right?
downloading it from the oldies section on Spotify. So not exactly the same experience, but at least you listen to the same artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are some other ways you think of when you come to finding common ground?
Well, you know what? I think for one thing, it's always important to define terms, because I think when we talk about common ground, we think about we immediately go to common experience. She listens to the music that I listen to. We enjoy some of the same things, and that can certainly be part of it. But if that's true, we're really limited. If that's the extent of where we can find common ground is in common experience, common interest, I'm not real hopeful, right? Because do you remember a time? I'm older than you, but do you remember a time when we were more divided along so many different lines than we are right now in this country?
No.
I can't. Politically, racially, socioeconomically, the wealth gap, certainly along religious lines. We're just really, really broken up into fragments. And, I remember as a kid being old enough to watch, the Walter Cronkite talk about the uprisings and upheaval, unrest on college campuses during the Vietnam War. That was, me as a kid seeing those stories play out. And, I always thought we'll never be, as divided as that childhood memory that I have. But I think we're there, right? I think we may have even exceeded some of the divisions of the 60s. Certainly we've approached them. And so at that point, you kind of go, is it even possible? Or are we even interested in bridging a divide? I've got to be completely transparent here that it's not my default mode either, right? It's not where, because I find myself being disgusted by people who I see have a very different worldview than I do. When I think that it in some way infringes on health and safety of other people, right? Because I'm watching the people who are like the mask deniers, right? The COVID deniers, and the people who don't want to wear the mask, or they think there's some kind of infringement. And I get disgusted by that, right? I mean, it's just, I was in a grocery store the other day with my wife, and we're checking out, and there's a special duty police officer, God love him. Appreciate all the police do, but he's there on kind of a special duty, and he's wearing his mask under his nose. And then he ignores the social distancing and comes up to chat up the young woman who's scanning our items. And he's laughing with his nose hanging out right over our cart, and I'm biting my tongue because he's got a badge and a gun, right? So I'm thinking, so I guess the new motto for law enforcement is to serve and infect. I'm not really sure, right? And I went out of there kind of seething, right? And there's a part of me that just wants to retreat back to people who see the seriousness of all of this just as I do, and to kind of let's just stay in our little bubble where we see and believe that things are really what the facts seem to bear out, And the truth is, in my more my less charitable moments, I do think about when this is all over, I'd like to have a T-shirt that expresses that, hey, when this is all over, would you mind still staying away from me, right? I mean, honestly, Brian, there's a part of me that goes there. It's like, I don't really think 6 feet is going to be enough. In fact, wait there, I've got a 10-foot pole I don't want to touch you with, right? So honestly, there are times that I just get fed up, and I see a whole lot of people that I think of as others, right? They don't think like me. They don't see the world as I do. They don't see the threat of this as I do, and I'm wondering, and it's like, how in the world are you equating public health issues with something like personal freedom. And here's my thing. I'm always thinking, I've noticed that every restaurant I go in has got a sign that says no shirts, no shoes, no service by order of the health department. I'm thinking, where are the protests outside of Waffle House saying, how dare you deny me the right to enjoy my all-star breakfast shirtless and barefoot? We're not doing that, right? So I think it's kind of ridiculous. Now, having vented all that, what I do in response is I go back home and I complain to my wife, right? You can't believe this idiot I saw in the store today.
And she loves to hear about that, right?
Oh, yes, right. Because we have our receptacles for all of our negative, what my friend Phil Sorrentino calls spiritual puke, I just give that to you, right? And it's like, I feel better, right? So, but yeah, it's a temptation. And it is, I think it's human nature to kind of look at groups of people who are not like us. They don't see the world as we do. And just get comfortable within the group of people who are like we are. But I think we have to think about what are the long-term consequences of that. It's not good. It's more siloing, it's more tribalism, it's more insulation from others, it's less understanding, it's less outreach. And there's no good result that comes from that. If we don't find a way to build these, some kind of connection to people outside of our comfortable little identity groups, then we are forever assigned to these little cells. And the cracks in between us begin to harden like scar tissue until it becomes almost impossible to bridge a divide.
Yeah. So, Dave, I keep going back to there was in church on Sunday. There was the reading was from the prodigal son, and the prodigal son talked so much about how the older son felt as though he was mistreated, and he viewed things from his perspective. But he didn't think about it from the father's perspective or the other son's perspective. So I think that a lot of what you're talking about is very relatable to that story.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think because here's what the good son was thinking. I've been faithful, man. I've done the right thing. I served. And you're killing the fatted calf for this bum? Right? Yeah. Went off and spent all of the money that you gave him, and now comes home broke, and he's nothing more than a burden. And where was my banquet? Right. And so you can see, again, we're kind of back to the vision thing. Is his view was very self-focused. Right. He didn't look at the heart of a father who had lost a son, and he said, you're right. You're all those things, but he was lost and now he's found, right? He's here. And so I celebrate, his return. And the view of the older son, the faithful son, was one that was very inward focused. And that gives us a clue, right? As long as we stay focused within on ourselves or on our group, on our tribe, then all we're going to see are reasons to feel resentment, right, and to just harden the lines between ourselves and others. So it's not. I just want to kind of paint the parameters of this problem. It's tough, and it takes some real intention. We're going to go the Home and Garden Show is going to be actually taking place this year, and we like to go every year. So a couple of years ago, we were there, and they had the kitchen and bath design people there, and they had something kind of cool. They had these virtual reality headsets, and what they were showing you was we have a technology that allows you to visualize your remodel, right, before it's done. We take the measurements and all of your kitchen or your bathroom, And then we put them in, and then you can do a 3D walk around, 360-degree view of what it's going to look like. And so I stepped up there and I said, I want to see this, right? And they didn't have my stuff in, but they had a bath design in there. And they put this thing on my head, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is so cool. I mean, look at it. That's a walk-in shower, and there's I'm looking at all of it. And the guy says, well, we can take the measurements and input this into our software. And we can look at, you can have this same thing done with your bathroom. And I said, oh, sign me up. Let's do it. And he said, great. He said, do you know what, how soon you wanted to start the remodel? I said, remodel nothing. I just want enough of these headsets to give to guests in the bathroom. That's all I want.
How do I get the headset?
What are these? Right? That's all I care about. But it was funny to watch people put them on, because when I had it on, I was within that reality. But when I stood outside, I saw people standing next to each other going, and they're amazed, but they're not sharing the same reality, even though they're sharing the same space. Because they're not seeing the same thing, right? And so, when you talk about vision, how in the world do you find common ground when you're not seeing the same thing in the same space? And that isn't always easy. So I got a question for you. Tell me this, Brian, what are the things that you think when you talk about vision? Let's just talk about physical vision. What's required for physical vision?
Eyes.
And but in order for, you've got to have you have the organ that is capable of processing visual information, right? Right. But to make that work, you really need, it depends on two things. I'm a big fan of the two things model of, let's simplify it, right? So one is you got to have light, right?
Okay.
Without light, there's no vision.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is you got to have focus, right? You've got to have something that you're focused on, the object or the area in which you direct that vision. And I think if you take those two things metaphorically, we're onto something. Because light, we also think of that as a way of saying understanding, right? Understanding helps us choose a different focus, right? It is the light that allows us to see the world in ways that, it really is, and it may be from the perspective of others. And if light is really just understanding, then I got to figure out, what I need to know to understand what other people are seeing. Does that make sense? So.
Well, yeah. So if light is understanding, so you need to figure out what other people know. So you got to look at things from other people's perspective. Is that what you mean?
Right. Well, I have to understand things about them, and I not necessarily take their perspective, but understand more about them. Now, I don't know if you know, there's a fellow named Daryl Davis. I don't know if that name means anything to you. No. He's an award-winning R&B musician, right? He's my age. We're born in the same year, and this guy has played with some of the greats. He's played like a boogie woogie piano and all for people like Chuck Berry and Bruce Hornsby. I mean, he played for him, and he's played for a lot of the greats, right? But he's also an author and an activist, and he's an African-American man who has led over 200 former Klansmen out of the Ku Klux Klan.
Really?
Now that's an incredible accomplishment.
How do you do that?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's the person I want to understand more from, because if you go yelling at people who don't think as you think, right? They don't see the world as you see it. It's real easy to just go, they're hopeless. Yeah. I'll just be over in my little group over here hating them because I'm right and they're wrong. And he would be very justified in saying he's right, they're wrong. But he also knows that nothing happens if that's it.
Right.
So in order to find whatever common ground, to be able to affect any kind of change in them and to lead them out of their, their bigotry. He's got to first of all connect with them in some kind of common ground, which means he needs to do some listening, right? He needs to figure out what led them to that, because the light that he needs is understanding what took them to them thinking, this is right. This is the worldview that I think explains a lot. It blames others. It lets me play the victim card, right? It makes me feel empowered and that I have some kind of right that other people shouldn't have, right?
Yeah.
But yelling at them doesn't make any difference and telling them how wrong they are. Instead, he asked them, why do you think this, right? When did you start thinking this? Who else was an influence in your life who thought these things? What he usually finds in what I've read from what he's written is it's coming from some place of fear. Well, here's the thing. The more we understand, the more compassion we have the capacity for, right? So was it Stephen Covey, who's, what was this? I think it was Third Habit, or it was a third habit was seek first to understand, or maybe that was the first habit. And the third one was put first things first, which I never understood why that was number 3, but okay. But his first one was seek first to understand and then to be understood. That's light, right? The first thing required for the vision that allows us to find common ground is to seek first to understand. Now that only happens not when I'm telling you what I think, right? How you're wrong. I'm saying, so tell me why you feel this way. And not with any judgment or anything. I'm just going to listen at first, right? I'm going to try and understand.
Yeah.
Because once I have some understanding, now I got something to work with, right? And the person where the common ground is, it's not in our common experience or our common beliefs, the color of our skin, or where we go to church. It's the need that we all have to be understood, to be cared about, to be listened to matter to someone else. So that's where we begin. How do I increase the light for my understanding? And then once I have enough light that I've got some understanding, then I can start to focus on the things that we do share. And some of those things that we do share is, we all have people that we care about, right? We may be very different in how we express that. We all have things that we believe in, right? And so I begin to focus on those things, and I find that, we may believe in very different things, but there are probably some things that we do have some overlap. But unless we have that understanding first, we're never going to discover that. That starts with let me set myself aside, my own sense of what's right, what I think is right, what I think the only view is that matters, and to really try to understand, why do the people who don't wear the mask the right way feel as they do? Why do they feel like that? And until I start to be willing to ask that question and have a respectful conversation with them, I'm never going to have enough light,
right,
to be able to have to change anything in them.
I saw the same thing play out with my brother and one of my nephews. And my nephew's probably 40 years old. My brother, my nephew said something about, I can't believe what's going on. This was January 6th, with the big upheaval at the Capitol building in Washington. He said something very, very oppositional. And my brother said, this is on Facebook, so no spoken words. It was just a bunch of text. My brother said, I totally understand it and it makes sense to me. So right then they could have stopped and they could have understood each other. They could have understood where they're coming from, as opposed to, okay, he's sitting here and he sat here and they're just gonna go at it. So that's a perfect example of what it is you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, because the truth is, and this is where I think, social media is such a weird little world of its own.
Mhm.
I think if we're going to accomplish understanding, social media is not the place to start.
Right.
Because what that becomes is an echo chamber. Let me express my most extreme opinions and views in ways that I can tune out whoever. And plus, I've got this kind of anonymity of this thing, this Facebook or some other type of social media platform that allows me to not have to engage or see the face of the person and how they're responding. And so I can do it in the abstract.
Yeah.
So I'll say hurtful things, right? We've seen families break up and get divided over these things. And have you had that experience where somebody was just absolutely full of vitriol on Facebook, and then you see them face to face and you have a wonderful conversation, right?
Yeah.
You don't talk about the things that they talk about on Facebook because you realize, hey, the common ground that we have, we can forget about that when we just hear, their political views expressed. So, generally speaking, I stay off of Facebook with friends and family with whom I know that I'm not going to, because all I have to do is read far enough into the thread of any post.
Yeah.
I'm going to be sad, right?
Yeah. Right.
I'm going to see things that I can't unsee, and it's not good. But occasionally you see people talk about, well, my cousin, my sister got involved with QAnon, and they honestly believe that there's a cabal of, cannibalistic, pedophile, rich elites who are draining the blood of children. And you're thinking, this is just too wacky to be anything but a cheesy movie. But they honestly have bit by bit, step by step, gotten down this rabbit hole till they believe these things. Now, some of them, the families have said, we've cut them off totally. And then others have come back from that. And everyone that's come back from that had a kind of similar story. Somebody listened to them respectfully, asked them questions, got more light on the vision that they had, right? The view that they had of the world, until finally they could, once they felt listened to and honored, they could begin to challenge them. Why do you think this? Well, what about this? And the challenges could bit by bit bring them back. Otherwise, we just get into a defensive posture. You're just one of those, like everybody else, just attacking me for my truth, right?
Dave, this is perfect. So you're talking about what it takes to have physical vision. You talk about being understood and light. So you need to have light.
Right.
The other thing you need to have is focus. And we are at the end of our time. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to see if there's another time where you can come back and talk more about that focus.
Okay. Yeah.
Sound good? Awesome.
Good.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming in today. This is awesome.
All right. Well, it's always fun, even though it was a while getting in.
Hey, it's all right. It's all right.
It's worth the effort.
Yeah, hang out in the green room, and I'll be back in a few seconds. I'll close out the show.
All right.
Thanks, Dave. All right. Bye. Wow. What a great show. Dave Caperton is awesome. And I just so looking forward to having him on next time to talk about that focus piece. That's going to be great. Now, we do have another great show coming up for you for tomorrow. We have Gio Rivera. If you don't know Gio Rivera, look him up. He is, Google him, and you're going to find a great entertainer, really a great person. And I'm just so looking forward to having him on tomorrow. And then that'll be Thursday. And then Friday, we have Sherman Gillums. Sherman is a person that uses a wheelchair to get around, but he also is in DC, and he's an activist. So he does a lot of great things with a lot of great organizations. He's going to talk to us about vision. So at 10 o'clock, he's going to be on for vision, but then he's going to come back at 11:30, and we're going to talk about radical vision for disabilities. So please tune into that as well. Thank you all so much for being here. I truly appreciate everything you do. If there's ever anything that I can do for you, please don't hesitate to let me know. And as always, keep one eye